Greetings. Let's talk for a minute. So, one of the questions that comes up occasionally, especially with newer members, is what are these barons and baronesses I hear about or I see at events or activities or meetings? I just want to talk a little bit about nobility, what they are, what they do, what they don't do, and what that means to you. So this is actually going to be a pretty quick overview. I could certainly go into a lot of detail. I don't want to talk about this as if it's a all-inclusive summary, but there are certainly some highlights that will probably help clarify things for you. So, first of all, nobility is a rank in the royal structure of the kingdom. They are below royalty. So you have the royal family, which are the crowns, the heirs. In Ansteorra, very soon we will have territorial royalty, the territorial prince and or princess. So that's the royal part, and then below that is the nobility. Now the nobility come in two flavors, for lack of better terms. You have a court barony and a landed barony. What's the difference? A court barony in Ansteorra, to be very specific, is a grant level award that is ranked below that of peerage, and it is given for being noble in your conduct and bearing and activity. Now, what does that mean specifically? There's a little bit of interpretation, but generally service is a huge part of that. There's a lot of service associated with every court barony I've ever seen given out, but also good conduct and skills in the martial combat or the arts and sciences. It's kind of a little bit of a holistic concept. But someone who has a court barony is called their excellency, and it is a genderless title. Men and women both go by it. You can also call them baron and or baroness, of course the gender titles. And they, as I said, are a grant level award, and it's its own kind of special category aside from the martial combat, the arts and sciences, and the service. Now, the other barony, the landed barony. This is an individual, or two, because it can be two nobles, who are selected by the crown to lead and inspire and represent a barony, a SCA group. Now when we say barony in the SCA, that's a fairly well-defined term. It is a area that has a certain number of people. There's a minimum population set in society law and usually reinforced or increased by kingdom law. They must have a certain number of officers. They must have certain officers within that docket. They must have a certain activity level. It's very specific, and if you want to know the details there, you can look that up in kingdom law. But in the roles that they play, in terms of leading and inspiring and representing the crown, a landed noble or two landed nobles are expected to encourage all of the activity in the barony, whether it be martial, the heavy weapons, chivalric fighting, the rapier community, side sword community, knife, axe, and spear, archery, siege engineering. If any of those have a presence, they're expected to encourage that, to support that, if they can, or if it's practical for them to show up or to participate in those activities. Very much the same with the arts and science community. Not just competition and documentation, though of course those are a big part of the arts and science community, but also arts and science as a service, as contributing to the barony, contributing to the group, contributing to the kingdom. Arts and sciences includes making banners to be displayed at events, making pennants to hang on list fields, decorating things to decorate a feast hall, making site tokens. That's all in the auspices of arts and sciences, and these are all things that the nobility are tasked with generally encouraging and supporting and lifting up. And of course we have the services itself, actual dedicated service, all of the heraldries, all the voice heraldry, all the administrative heraldry, all the book heraldry, autocrating, feastocrating, general service, being a runner at an event, being entourage for royalty, anytime someone is doing anything, these are all, it's a huge umbrella term when we say service, but all of that are things that the nobility are supposed to encourage and support and uplift. Now, we're going to talk about how they uplift that in a minute, but the general good health of the barony is part of their charge, which also includes engagement and engaging on things that maybe are not going so well, helping to resolve conflicts, helping to resolve miscommunications, helping to bring conflicted parties to resolution. These are all things that are in broad strokes generally expected for the baron and or baroness to help facilitate, whether that be directly, whether they intervene and or intercede and speak to all parties, or whether they help facilitate someone else to come in and help resolve a conflict or teach a class or lead an activity. That's something that they are supposed to be part of. Now, the other end of that, a baron and baroness are direct representatives of the crown. It is absolutely expected for the crown to be able to regularly call a local noble and say, how's your group doing? What are they up to? I want, names, specific activities. What are they doing? How are they doing it? How are things going? And it's not just the positive. Sometimes they want to know. I've heard some rumors. Are these true? And they are a direct conduit from what they see to the crown, so the crown can have a working knowledge of how the crown's people are doing. That is part of their job. I've always been told that anything you do in front of a baron or baroness, a landed baron or baroness, you should effectively treat it as if you're doing it in front of the crown, which that kind of goes both ways. If you're doing something awesome, there's a really good chance the crown's going to find out, and if you do something a little less than awesome, there's a really good chance the crown is going to find out. So they are ambassadors to the crown, which means all of that information that they take in, all of the people that they meet, all of the people they talk with, all the people they support, all of that, there's their job to make sure that gets passed on to the crown. Now, as to the specific details of what does your specific local current landed baron or baroness tell the crown, that's part of the relationship between them and the crown. I don't know. But as a general rule, that facilitation of information up to the crown and down from the crown, that is the cornerstone of their role. By definition, a barony has to have a baron and baroness. If a barony were ever to not have a baron or baroness, they would need to be placed they'd be named as a crown barony, which means the king and or queen of the kingdom is now also their baron and baroness and part of their local administration, which from a functional standpoint is not very efficient because the crown is busy being the crown. And that would hold until a new baron and baroness could be selected. Now, a little bit about territorial nobility. We say baron and baroness, that's a cultural artifact of the age where you either had one sitting noble or you had a male and female. Those were the only two options. The laws have since been changed and clarified to specifically call out that co-nobles of the same gender may sit the baronial thrones, and there have been multiple examples of that now. Barons and baronesses, landed barons and baronesses, may be a married couple. They may be romantically involved. They may be best friends with separate families, entirely separate households, bringing effectively two mundane households worth of support, logistics, and income to this equation. There are examples of all of those. So seeing a baron and baroness on the throne, don't assume that they're husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend. They may be best friends. I've actually have been friends with several landed nobles who were good and dear friends with totally separate families, and their relationship was a very strong SCA-based, effectively a business relationship to keep the barony going and support it. So that really is kind of the summary of it. Is there a lot more to talk about? Oh, yes, there's absolutely a lot more to talk about. I can't say enough about that. If you have any questions about what it's like or what it involves being a baron or baroness, about what is the landed nobility charged with doing, I encourage you to start off by looking in kingdom law. In my case, Ansteorra, of course, but whatever your kingdom is, a lot of their roles and responsibilities will be spelled out there. Look at Corpora, society law. You can find that on the society webpage. And talk to your current landed nobles if you have any, or your past landed nobles. Talk to long-standing members of your group. There's a lot to learn. If that's something that interests you, you could sit down and have a long conversation. So I encourage you, learn more about it. But for those of you who are just getting started off, I'm sure you've heard this term 100 different ways, 100 different times. For the landed nobility, that is what it means, and that is what it stands for. So I hope that leaves you better informed. Until then, I'll see you at the next event. Goodbye and God bless.